continuing our narrative of the debate between monism and dualism in the framework of symbiotic panentheism. So in this volume, Panentheism Addressing Monism, Dualism, the question dominating the debate regarding the validity of monism versus dualism has been, is awareness an innate characteristic of the physical? The question, however, has become distorted over time, applying reductionism to the debate. The actual question is the physical an innate characteristic of the abstract, or is the abstract the innate characteristic of the physical? In essence, the question becomes, is the abstract in the physical, or is the physical in the abstract? And if one or the other is the case, then why is it true? Continuing, who owns the body? If the physical provides a means by which pure consciousness or virgin consciousness moves to complete consciousness, the question becomes, who or whom owns the body, or the vehicle in which spirit has been deposited? Is it the ego? This is not a rhetorical question. This is a literal question. Is the body, the sensory data machine, owned by the individual entity or ego of multiplicity, or is the body owned by the whole, which is where virgin consciousness abides? Owned by the singularity of purpose, or will, if you could call it God's will. Owned by ambitions for homogeneity. The two ifs. If the unit of multiplicity owns the body, then the body is a personal possession of the individual unit or ego of knowing, and as such has a specific function to that unit and must be released by society to perform its function as it applies to that unit or individual of knowing. In such a metaphysical model, society becomes the feliciter of the individual. Humanism. If the body is an implement whose function is the preservation and evolution of society, that it is society which has the right to control the body, and it is society which may dictate the parameters regarding the journey of the body. In such a metaphysical model, the individual becomes the facilitator of society. It may be metaphysically argued that it is the individual entity of knowing which has the rights to the body, and as such, the fetus is to be protected by all means. The question emerging from this scenario becomes, what does the unit of knowing becoming knowing entity? Is knowing initiated with the advent of the brainwave, or is the unit of knowing initiated at the age of 1 year? Since the answers to the questions have not yet been established, one has little choice but to allow the unit of knowing to control its own sensory input mechanism if diversity is to be recognized. Religion, philosophy, and science may enter the decision-making process as sources of perpetual enlightenment, but the final decision must be left to the entity of knowing, which controls the sensory data input mechanism, the body. The war regarding access to the chemical RU486 is as much the epitome of such logic as is abortion. What then of Singer's suggestion regarding infanticide up to the age of 1 year? Since the sensory data unit, or human being, or ego, is a potential mechanism of development of virgin consciousness, and since we have not established when it is knowing itself begins as opposed to neural function, we have little choice at this point in time to decide the issue on the side of potentiality of knowing having already been initiated, since the unit of knowing cannot speak for itself. What then of partial birth abortion? Partial birth abortion, turning the baby in the womb to cause the feet to emerge first and then forcing the head to remain in the vaginal canal while a hole is created in the base of the skull in order to facilitate the procedure of allowing the brain to be suctioned out of the skull through the use of a vacuum pump while the head remains in the canal, would become illogical. What then of the viable fetus the mother wishes to abort? So be it. The mother makes the decision, for the mother's body is owned by the unit of knowing. If, however, the fetus is salvageable, with no more trauma to the mother than the abortion process, then the choice is the same as above. What then of the chemical RU486? The choice to use or not to use the drug is the choice of the mother, the choice representing diversity of individuality. Where does society then enter the scenario? Society has no choice but to act as the safety net of nurturing for the sensory data mechanism, or the human ego. As such, provide equal access to opportunity not only for the independent entities, but for the quote-unquote unwanted viable fetus and the unwanted child. Society becomes the facilitator for equal access to opportunity. Society is obligated to become the facilitator for equal access to opportunity for all entities for which it has been established. Diversity and the disadvantaged. Material wealth is not an opportunity to eat. Material wealth is a goal. The goal should be available to all in equal fashion. Should be. Obtainable through the process of equal opportunity. Some entities may attain the goal through one means of pursuit, and other entities may obtain the goal through other means of pursuit. Happiness, peace, self-acceptance, love are all equal opportunity goals obtainable through one's personal pursuit. But happiness, peace, self-acceptance, and love are not attained by all. regardless of being attained by all or not, abstractual goals remain equal opportunity goals. So it is materialism should be an equal opportunity goal. To be an equal opportunity goal requires equal access to the means of obtaining such goals. Diversity of wellness opportunities, diversity of educational, nutritional, shelter, diversity of religious opportunities emerge as the product of dualism. Dualism acts as the rational foundation supporting diversity of individuality. Monistic perceptions that consciousness of consciousness is an extension of consciousness, which in turn is an extension of physicality, provides the rationale for homogeneity. Monism acts as the rational foundation supporting the homogeneity of the whole. This is not to say the monists are unethical, nor is it to say that the dualists are ethical. It simply says both do not recognize the necessity of the other. Without the monistic characteristics of matter, the monistic characteristic of the abstract would be significantly different than what it is. But just what is it? What is the nature of abstraction itself? What is the nature of God? This is the true debate, for we already have an elementary understanding of the physical void, the independence of abstraction. And we have an elementary understanding of the abstractual without the physical, ontologically speaking. What we do have is the elementary understanding of the abstract independent of the physical, and we do not have an understanding regarding how the abstract and the physical can interact independent of each other while simultaneously being dependent upon each other. Man needs God, but God does not need man. This is only half of the scenario. It is not surprising, therefore, that we do not have a more complete rationale regarding the ethical and moral understanding of such an interrelationship. And I would add, for your further inquiry, process, theology would say that God needs man just as much as man needs God in order to exist in relationship. Hence the term open relational process theologies. It is this work, The War and Peace of a New Metaphysical Perception, which initiates just such a discussion and analysis. Minimalism of support. What does society, a non-knowing entity created by knowing entities, owe units or individuals of knowing? Under the metaphysical system of the individual acting within God, society owes each unit 1. Equal access to opportunities to travel unimpeded, or travel through their life's journey, if you will. 2. Equal access to vast diversities of opportunities. The diversity of opportunities is limited only by the sensory data mechanism itself. Should the entity of knowing occupy a sensory data mechanism with an intelligence quota of 20, the entity of knowing will obviously not be capable of traveling its physical journey. As a neurosurgeon, although the entity of knowing may not be able to experience the journey of a neurosurgeon, the entity of knowing should not be denied the opportunity to make the attempt to become such. Should the entity of knowing occupy a sensory data mechanism void established wealth, the entity of knowing will obviously not be able to experience instantaneous extreme forms of materialistic gratification. And I would say that's not such a bad thing. Although the entity of knowing may not be able to experience instantaneous forms of extreme materialistic gratification, the entity of knowing should not be denied the opportunity to attempt to accomplish such a feat. Obviously, there is a significant difference between being allowed equal access to the opportunity and accomplishment of such a feat. The responsibility to protect the right of the individual to journey unimpeded lies with the society created by entities of knowing. Entities of knowing find themselves immersed within the society they have created. As such, society has the obligation to facilitate equal opportunity as opposed to accomplish such opportunities for the entities of knowing society finds immersed within itself. Creation of equal access to opportunity is the function of society, while accomplishment of the accomplishment is the function of the entity of knowing. What minimalist obligation, other than facilitating equal access to travel unimpeded and facilitating equal access to the vast diversity of opportunities, does society have regarding the life or safety net for the knowing entity and the knowing entity's sensory data mechanism? Society has the obligation of ensuring a Spartan dignified lifestyle from which the entity of knowing may spring on its journey towards completion. What that Spartan lifestyle may be is as diversified as the diversity of cultures, societies, religions, climatic conditions within which entities of knowing may find themselves immersed. Such diversities are as specialized as the human species itself has allowed itself to become. One society may decide Spartan is the type of lifestyle as established by the Saudi Arabian government for its people, or as a Spartan as the Hindu concept of the outcasts. One point of departure lies in the heart of metaphysics itself. So what is illness? Illness occurs when entity A is invaded by entity B, and B then proceeds to use A for its own means, which in turn compromises A's attempt to reach for its own sense of purpose, reason, goal in life. Illness is an extremely important concept, and as a concept, its cure cannot be fully integrated into society until it is understood metaphysically. Once illness is understood metaphysically, it is an awesome tool for understanding the ethics of behavior, beginning with the individual and expanding to the concept of intragalactic as well as intergalactic interactions, be the interactions in the form of individuals or whole societal interactions. In fact, once understood metaphysically, illness becomes the means for understanding intra-universe as well as inter-universe reactions of knowing, be it in the form of individual reactions or whole societal interactions. How can such extremes of universal rationality regarding micro and macro universal ethics emerge? Universal, literally, universal ethics seems to align to us, or seems so alien to us, rather. So hugely impossible a task to undertake, let alone accomplish. Such a development seems alien to us because our direction regarding ethical rationalism has been headed in a different direction. Our present direction of ethical development has been headed in the direction of ethical metaphysical diversity rather than ethical metaphysical homogeneity. The direction of metaphysical diversity of ethics would appear to support the embracement of diversity itself. Metaphysical diversity generating the diversity of ethics does not support diversity of perceptions. Our present trend toward ethical diversity undermines diversity of individuality through the fragmentation of rationalization itself. In essence, diversity of ethics emerging from our species is the product of conflicting metaphysical models we embrace as a species. As long as the metaphysical model we embrace remains in conflict resolution regarding social issues will, by necessity, a process of compromising one's principles only when the most basic primal forms of conflicts are brought to a close. Metaphysical conflicts will social conflicts be resolvable. Society has developed its own form of long-standing perceived irresolvable paradox regarding social perceptions. Society perceives the accomplishment of developing a universal philosophy as a huge task because society views the whole from which a universal philosophy emerges to be enormously expansive and diverse. Perhaps too complex for the simple-minded. It is because of this viewpoint, the perception of enormity or complexity, which causes us to shy away from the task of developing a third metaphysical system from which a universal philosophy emerges. The paradox remains a paradox or conflictual because we have not applied Husserl's reductionism and Occam's razor to the problem. Once applying such techniques, however, metaphysics will find the problem involves three basic concepts: singularity, multiplicity, and nothing, or no thing, or a perceived nothingness. This fear of undertaking the seemingly impossible task of covering our universe covering other universes of which we are not even yet aware, with a universal ethic, a universal philosophy, which generates a universal ethic, keeps us from coming together to work on such a project. Far too many barriers and walls, and seemingly no bridges. We will expand enormous quantities of effort to leave our footprint on the moon, yet relatively no time to understand what it is we are doing ethically, or what impact we're about to leave when our footprint remains once we have left. We will spend countless hours to send our signature into the realm of space, no longer significantly influenced by the sun's gravitational pull, but we shy away from understanding our place, our rights as a conscious individual existing within the very universe we find ourselves, quote unquote, confined within. We shy away, and therein lies the laughable, the full comedy of the situation. The paradox of Zeno's distance once again confronts us, and we perceive distance to be rather than simply not being. As such, we view the enormity of space as enormity itself rather than simply being. Now, what does this seemingly misplaced discussion mean? The apparent misplaced discussion is not misplaced, but rather a prelude to the understanding that we no longer need to be afraid. Even the seemingly enormous task of developing a universal philosophy, which covers the whole of the universe, covers the totality of all universes, is simply a task of Herschel's reductionism applied to metaphysics, cosmology, and ontology. So just where is it we begin the development of a universal philosophy from which a universal ethic of pluralism evolves? Our point of departure lies in the heart of metaphysics itself. We begin with a simplistic model of what is, and proceed from there to the concept of understanding the error of either-or perceptions. Such a development will naturally lead us to an understanding regarding the physical in terms of the inner space of the individual, the inner space of the physical body, understanding the whole of the mind itself. Understanding the mind will in turn lead us to an understanding regarding the inner space of the mind, understanding the whole of the individual consciousness of the consciousness, the whole of the individual knowing, understanding the individual soul, understanding the complete unit of multiplicity. Now, not only does the development of a relatively more sophisticated third metaphysical model, as opposed to the two opposing metaphysical models presently established, allows us to examine the micro, but such a model allows us to examine the macro in a new light. The new metaphysical model allows us to look outward from the physical, the body, to understanding the outer space of the individual, understanding the universe itself, which philosophical theologian Charles Hartshorne recognized as the body of God. An interesting analogy. Understanding the whole of the universe will in turn lead us to an understanding regarding the outer space of the universe, understanding the whole of summation of consciousness, the whole of summation of knowing, understanding the whole, understanding complete singularity, or God. The process not only allows us to look inward, but to look outward. The process not only allows us to resolve internal conflicts found inside the individual, but allows us to resolve external conflicts found outside the individual. And this is the end of this part. To be continued. Thank you for listening.